Just for the want of time, I'll stand on the existing protocols and also to say thank you very much to every one of you for making time to be here today. Now, there's a place in the central region of Ghana, about 5 kilometers from the town of Mankesim, where the earth holds something the world is racing to find: lithium. The mineral at the heart of the batteries powering electric vehicles, renewable energy storage systems, and the technologies that governments and corporations across the globe are betting their futures on. Ghana sits on one of the most significant lithium deposits in West Africa. And yet, for most Ghanaians, the Woya lithium project has existed mostly as a headline, a talking point, a promise debated in Parliament and discussed in policy circles, but rarely seen up close by the people whose job it is to explain it to the public. But I tell you what, earlier this year, all that changed. For the very first time, a group of journalists stood on that ground. They did not read about it from a press release. They did not quote a government spokesperson from behind a desk. They walked the site. They saw the pegmatite formations where lithium mineralization actually occurs and what this means. They understood in a way that no briefing document could ever convey what it actually means for Ghana to be at the cusp of becoming one of the first lithium-producing nations in West Africa. Those journalists were ours. That moment is the Africa Extractives Media Fellowship in its purest form, not a classroom exercise, not a theoretical discussion about accountability and the public interest, a journalist standing where the story actually lives, with the knowledge to understand what she is looking at and the craft to tell the story about it. Now, that is what we set out to build. And tonight, with graduates seated in this room, we can say with confidence that we have begun. Cohort 1 came to us in October 2025. Journalists from across Ghana, some with years of experience behind them, some still finding their feet, all drawn by the same conviction that the stories they were being asked to tell about mining, oil and gas, and so on deserved more than they had been equipped to give. Over 6 months, they went to the Tema Oil refinery and stood inside one of the more critical pieces of infrastructure in this country. They engaged the National Petroleum Authority and the Petroleum Hub Development Corporation on the regulatory frameworks that shape Ghana's energy future. They worked with Digital Earth Africa and learned to read their own country from satellite to map the environmental footprints of extraction in ways no eye on the ground alone could see. They sat with communities, they listened, they asked difficult questions, and they wrote. The work they produced is a matter of record, stories that matter, stories that would not have existed without this program, the AEMF. But I would only be telling you part of the truth, ladies and gentlemen, if I stood here and spoke only about our achievements. Every fellowship writes its own story. Ours is a story of achievement, growth, and purpose. But it is also a story of loss. A chapter we never imagined we would have to write. Perhaps that is life's greatest contradiction. That our greatest moments can become the backdrop to our deepest heartbreak. Just when we were beginning to see this fellowship become everything we had hoped for, we were confronted with a loss that reminded us of how fragile life is. Noah Nash Wenyefia came into this fellowship with a quiet determination that never demanded attention, but always earned it. He listened closely. He He asked thoughtful questions. He challenged ideas with respect. Every session, every conversation, every assignment reflected someone who cared deeply about becoming a better journalist and about using that journalism to serve others. Then far too soon, he was gone. There are moments that stop a program in its tracks, moments that remind us with painful clarity that behind every application form, every attendance register, and every graduation certificate is a human life. Noah's death was one of those moments. It broke hearts across this fellowship. It left an empty seat that no one could ignore. Today, Noah's name appears on this graduation list because he earned his place here. He completed this journey with the same commitment and integrity that defined his time with us. We are proud to honor him alongside his fellow graduates. To Noah's family, we hope that you know he became part of something much larger than a training program. He became part of a community that will remember him, not because of how his story ended, but because of how he lived it, with curiosity, humility, and purpose. May his memory continue to challenge us to ask better questions, my fellow journalists, tell better stories, and never take for granted the privilege of the work we do. To the graduating fellows of Cohort 1, you have earned what you received tonight, not because you completed a program, but because you chose, in a media landscape that does not always reward depth and rigor, to pursue both anyway. Ghana is not always an easy place to be a journalist, and I can personally testify to this. The extractive sector is not always a welcoming space for scrutiny. You went in anyway. That takes something no curriculum can teach. This is not the end of your relationship with the Africa Extractives Media Fellowship. It is the beginning of a different chapter. You have been transitioned onto the AEMF Alumni Portal, a platform we have built specifically for you and for every fellow who will come after you, because we believe the most powerful thing about the AEMF is that it can produce not just individual journalists, but a connected community of them. On the alumni portal, for example, you find each other, not just those of you in this room, but over time, the fellows from our Southern African program, as well as the Anglophone and Francophone West Africa programs over the next few months. We are building a Pan-African network of extractives journalists connected on one platform, able to collaborate across borders, share leads, co-investigate, and support each other in ways that no individual newsroom here or in many parts of the world can replicate. The portal, for example, gives you access to a curated library of resources specific to extractive reporting, like legal frameworks, mineral agreements, royalty structures, environmental legislation, and so on. But more than the tools, what the alumni portal gives you is standing. You are no longer just journalists who went through a program. You are members of a community with a track record, standard, and a reputation that is growing with every single cohort. When a story about lithium mining in Ghana needs someone who actually stood on the Ewoya site, the AEMF Alumni Network is where editors and institutions must come looking. When an investigation into petroleum revenues in Southern Africa needs a partner in Ghana, it is your inbox that should ring. We have built the infrastructure. Now it is yours to use. To the incoming fellows of Cohort 2, all 50 of you, you are joining something that is no longer just an idea. You are joining a program with a track record, with partners who believe and with a standard. To the cohort graduating tonight, have indeed set that standard. The question is not whether you can meet it. The question is how far beyond you are willing to go. And the program you are joining in 2026 is not the same program that opened its doors in October last year. It has definitely grown. The University of Queensland is now a partner, one of Australia's greatest research universities with deep expertise in mining, environmental science, and the governance of natural resources. Their faculty will bring to your training a rigor that connects what happens in Ghana's mines to global systems within which those mines operate. Now, the Natural Resource Governance Institute, one of the most respected voices in the world on how extractive wealth is managed and mismanaged, is also alongside us. The Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, Ghana's own watchdog on the management of petroleum resources, is also a partner. These are not mere names on a letterhead. They are doors opened into rooms that journalists in this country have rarely been allowed to enter. There is more to come. Not everything can be announced tonight. What I can tell you is that the direction of this program is clear. Outward and upward, into Southern Africa, into Anglophone and Francophone West Africa, into the corridors of universities, the boardrooms and mining companies, and the offices of the regulators who shape the rules of the extractive game. We are building something continental, and we are doing it deliberately. But this evening is about something bigger than the fellowship alone. Over the past year, we have quietly been building the institutions that will shape the next chapter of Newswire Africa. All of them exist for one purpose: to ensure that important African stories are told with credibility, depth, and purpose. One of the ventures we are particularly excited about is Dip Journal. Every day, diplomacy shapes our economy, our security, our trade, our education, and our place in the world. Yet too often, those conversations remain inaccessible, hidden behind technical language, or confined to policy circles. Dip Journal exists to bring those conversations to the public square through clear, credible, and Africa-focused journalism. In a relatively short period, that platform has already published more than 360 stories covering diplomacy, international affairs, trade, security, geopolitics across Africa, and beyond. Dip Journal is also producing a premium print publication featuring exclusive interviews, deeper analysis, and long-form conversation. For example, our July edition features an exclusive interview with Australia's High Commissioner to Ghana, Her Excellency Bernice Owen Jones, as she reflects on 4 remarkable years in Ghana. It is not an interview about communiques or carefully rehearsed talking points. It is an honest conversation about the diplomacy that happens after the meeting has ended and why Ghana runs on relationships as much as institutions, and about Africa and the future of the West African sub-region. But stories should not only be read, they should also be heard, watched, and shared. Newswire Radio is already live, accessible via website and through a growing number of online streaming platforms. And over the past 2 years, we have focused deliberately on building the foundations for a credible radio broadcast operation. Today, that work is visible. Through our digital analytics and IP mapping, we are consistently recording listenership across West Africa as well as Central Africa, and we have countries like Burkina Faso, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, and so on. In parallel, we are preparing for a rollout of Newswire TV, which will extend this ecosystem into a full broadcast television presence. What we are building at Newswire Africa is not simply a media company. It is an ecosystem, journalism that investigates, a platform that connects diplomats and policymakers to the public, a fellowship that trains the next generation, a women's empowerment agenda anchored through initiatives like the Women's Impact Circle, and running through it all, the same conviction that African stories told by Africans with a full weight of professional craft and institutional backing can and make a change on this continent. We are not there yet, ladies and gentlemen, but we have certainly made significant progress, thanks in large part to everyone in this room. To our partners, our sponsors, our diplomatic friends, especially the Australian High Commission, thank you. You made tonight possible. You are making what comes next possible. To our graduating fellows, go and report, go and dig, go and stand on the ground where the story lives, and tell it with everything this program gave you. To our incoming fellows, I say welcome. The standard is definitely high. The work is hard, and there has never been a more important time to be doing this. Ghana is watching, Africa is watching. Do not disappoint. Thank you.